This is Joe Peters from MOMFIT with Joe Peters. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and the H.E.R Network in the Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Single TV app in the respective app stores in iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Single TV is also available in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Roku Stick in all the smart TVs since 2016. And if you are not following me yet, make sure that you go to Facebook and Instagram and follow me on Joe Unicorn Coach. I handle all my social media by myself. So if you have a question, a challenge, a problem around your motherhood, make sure to send me a DM. And if I don't know the answer, I will have an expert like Cynthia that comes and help us because our mission is helping you to win the marathon of motherhood without burnout. So, with that being said, I am super excited to have Cynthia here with us. Cynthia is a licensed marriage and family therapist with training in maternal mental health, EMDR, and human design, who provides support services for mothers and their families. Her mission is to support mothers as they assess and develop a dynamic that supports the entire family. The company was founded in 2020 in our little pandemic era after observing an increase of number of mothers experiencing distress as they navigate motherhood and their family dynamics. Among these families, some mothers and sometimes fathers were
Yes.
experiencing severe distress, such as symptoms of postpartum depression. I did. Suicidal ideation. I did. In response, Cynthia has since developed a coaching model and related workshops through combining her various skills and trainings. Cynthia believes that mothers are the portal into the family. I agree, they are the glue, the nucleus of the family, and they are the best way to ensure that the entire system thrives. Families Through supporting moms and families, Cynthia's model is four pillars of thriving families into coaching model: well-being of the mother, partnership, home, logistics, and parenting. She is confident that she can shift the experience of the entire family and system, being a mother herself and experiencing the hardships firsthand. And through her clients, Cynthia is
Mhm.
passionate about redefining outdated family dynamics and paving the path towards obtaining great harmony that will benefit the whole. Cynthia, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's gonna start with your favorite um, phrase. I'm gonna take this because I know it's going to be a great show when I'm already starting to be hot in my um. Then her phrase, one she sent me three phrases, overachiever. But the one that
Always.
we're going to talk about is we must learn to shower in our emotions and not bathe on them. Let's gonna start with why do you pick that phrase as your favorite phrase and what that means to you?
So thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to be here and talk about all things motherhood. Um, so that phrase, I find myself using it a lot with my clients, not only my mom clients, but all of my clients, because what I've noticed, and I'll explain what it means, but what I've noticed is that a lot of times when people are struggling or when they come to therapy, it's because they get caught up in a specific emotion, right? Whether it's sadness, anger, helplessness, any negative emotion that they may be feeling is usually what will be the driving force to bring them to therapy. And a lot of times the work focuses around getting them to shift from that emotion, right? Like, because that emotion creates almost like a filter in which they experience their whole world, their whole life, right? And when people become afraid of that emotionality, right, which sometimes people do, or it gets conditioned away from them, right? We tend to do that a lot to our boys. Don't cry, don't this, don't that, right? We tend to teach people how to suppress their emotions. And we know by now that suppressing emotions is it's like shaking a Coca-Cola bottle, right? The pressure is going to build up and it's going to go somewhere. So either we have a world full of angry people, which often we experience, or we manifest it in our bodies, right? Like we may become sick, or we may become burnout or tired, or all the things, right? Because those emotions need to go somewhere. So what I teach my clients is to shower in their emotions, which means you want to give yourself an opportunity to stand still for a second and feel the emotions that you're feeling, right? If you need to cry, if you feel angry, like acknowledge the emotions and allow yourself to experience them, right? And sometimes just experience them alone is enough to allow them to dissipate, like to disappear, because all of our emotions are transient, right? They're not supposed to stay there forever. They're kind of supposed to run through us. And that's what I envision as being a shower. And then the opposite of that would be bathing in it, right? When we just sit in our emotions and kind of like stew in it and allow them to cover us all up and consume us. So we want to bathe in our emotions, let them run through us, and then move forward, right? Like sometimes there'll be days where my mom passed away in 2018, right? And grief is one of those experiences that never really goes away. You experience it in waves, right? So what I share with my clients as a tangible example is, there are days that I feel sad about the fact that my mom died, and I will allow myself to cry or to experience the feelings about that. And then once I release that, I keep moving forward, right? I can't sit in that grief and be sad that my mom passed away forever. And this is one example, but you can apply that to anything that happens in your life that triggers strong emotions.
I think that that is so good, and is because I think that part of that toxic positivity is like, oh, you don't have to feel it. And especially when we are talking about postpartum
Yeah.
depression and overwhelmness on being a mom, sometimes we fight that those feelings, those, I hate the label of bad feelings, and I'm trying really hard with my son
Yeah.
to don't have a label and a weight into the
Right.
feeling, because I think that is good what you were saying. Shower in them, say, "Oh, okay, I'm feeling them."
Yeah.
And what that makes me remember is that movie from Disney of Inside Out, where
Mm-hmm.
every emotion had a purpose, and
Yes.
then how we know that the only reason why we stay with emotions is when we fight them. But if we just shower them and let them pass through us, it only takes 120 seconds and the emotion is gone. So
Right.
I love that. Now tell me a little bit about how was that, because you have such a amazing background in holistics. So um, let's gonna talk a little bit about that traditional family dynamics, roles and expectations, and then
Mm-hmm.
the new proposal of what we need to change and why those old dynamics literally are not working for families and are not working for moms that we were talking that are the center and the most important part of the dynamic, and how they are impacting the mental health.
Yes. So, as you mentioned, I started the company in 2020. I've been a clinician for a long time and worked with very different populations. But in 2020, I really noticed that I started having a lot of families that were in the similar stages that I was in. At that time, my kids were, I don't know, 4 and 6. My son was in kindergarten, my daughter wasn't in school yet. And I started having all these families that were struggling with the same things that I was struggling with at that time come to me, which at first was a little like disorienting because I was like, okay, I'm trying to figure this all out. And then I have all these people that need help figuring it out as well, right? And I realized that it kind of became like this beautiful dance of figuring it out together as I was watching what was going on with them and what was going on my end at home. And I started noticing that a lot of moms were really in a dark place, right? And I think, like you mentioned about feeling the emotions, I think moms, especially in the postpartum period, we our strong emotions are usually countered with toxic positivity, right? It's either dismissed or you're asked to turn it quickly into gratitude. And there's a place for gratitude and it's important. But if I'm telling you that I'm struggling with my baby, he's been crying for days, I haven't been able to take a shower, and you're telling me, well, but you should be so happy that you have a baby. And it's like, well, yeah, I am, but it doesn't take away that I'm also experiencing all these difficult moments, right? So I started reflecting, like, why am I all of a sudden noticing moms having a harder time with mothering, right? Is it just that more people are coming to me and I'm just seeing it for the first time, or has something changed, right? So I started really reflecting on it and sitting with it and thinking about it and doing research and doing all the things that I do. And I realized that, you know, post feminist movements, right? Several decades back, we've had many waves. There's been many phases to the feminist movement, right? But the big thing that happened was that women were now not as present in the home, right? They were able to go out and have careers and pursue their dreams and do all these things, which is wonderful and beautiful and offered us so many opportunities that we did not have before. However, that aspect of our lives, that system changed, but none of our other systems changed with it, right? So the family system has remained pretty much intact even through all those changes, right? So the roles, the responsibilities, the division of labor, the mental load, all the things have remained the same because that's what we've been taught from generation to generation, right? Like, this is what dads do, this is what moms do, this is what wives do, this is what husbands do. And we kind of just keep taking that cookie cutter method of doing things. And what is happening is that there are families who are still upholding those roles, but the mom is also working, the mom is also doing all these things. There's more expectations. I think we live a different life than we did back then with access to so much. I realized I was sitting in the car yesterday I was thinking about buying things on Amazon and how just a few years ago, we had to make a whole production out of, like, I needed something for my kids. I just got them fish and I needed something for their fish tank. And before, we had to make this whole production of, like, on a Saturday, planning time to go to the store to pick up the item. Now we can just order things on Amazon and it makes things so much easier. And I was like, how wonderful that our lives are easier in that way. But because they're easier, we've made them busier, right? Because we can do so much more in less time. So we're constantly trying to do more. And moms are burning out, right? Moms are feeling like they're failing in every area of their life, right? They can't be a good wife, they can't be a good mom, they can't be a good employee, or they're trying to be good at all of these and just don't have the energy to sustain that. So, in realizing that, what I have now started working with families on doing is through the program, I help them go through the different pillars of their, like, what I consider to be the compartments of the family life, right? Which are, and at first it was the well being of the mom only, but as I started implementing the program, I realized that dads are struggling too, right? And dads are struggling too because um, there are a lot of dads that see the problem and want to participate in fixing it, but they don't know how because they haven't been taught how, right? They've been taught this is what dads do in their family life, right? I kind of show up, I go to work, I support from a side, right? I'm not as hands-on or involved. So everybody's struggling. Everybody's struggling. So my first thing is stabilizing the individual, right? Like, what's your purpose? What do you love? What So many people walking around that have no idea who they are, what they like, what excites them, what their values are, right? So really getting them very grounded in who are you as a person, right? So that's the first pillar. And how do you take care of yourself once you know who you are as a person and what your needs are? The second part is the partnership. Like, in order for a family to function well, the foundation of and not to say that single family homes are wouldn't, that this doesn't matter as well, because even if your partnership is not a romantic partner, you're partnering with somebody to raise your kids, right? Somebody is helping you in, hopefully, and if not, then let's hope you
Not a
find that
problem.
village, right? Then let's hope you find that village, because we should not be doing this by ourselves. We should not be raising our children and parenting our children in a bubble by ourselves. It's not healthy for us, and it's not healthy for our children either. I think that they need to be exposed to other people that love them and care for them as well, right? So if you are not in a partnership, then start looking for that village, or they're probably already around you. Just identify them. So, really grounding those relationships. Are we on the same page? Do we have the same values? What do we desire for our family? What do we desire for us? How do we model what we desire for our kids, right? Like if we want our kids to find a good partner when they're older, how do we model what healthy partnership looks like for our children? The next part is home logistics. And home logistics is how, like, literally how we run our house, right? It's like the idea, like, I think of it of like running a business, right? So, how do we run our home in a way where we know what needs to be done, we know what we want to be done based on our mission, our values, our goals for our family, right? And we can use that as a filter to make decisions instead of doing all the things. I realize that a lot of families are doing, I actually just had a session with a client recently where she was talking about, like, sometimes I feel like I'm not a good mom because I don't have my kids in all these activities and we're not doing all these things. And I'm like, but do your kids want that? Like, do you, like, when we know our children, then we know how to make this. And when we know ourselves and our values, we know how to make decisions that are aligned with that instead of making decisions based on what everybody else is doing or what everybody else is telling us to do, right? That cookie cutter method may not fit into what our family needs or what you need as a parent.
And I think that is very important to realize that, like you were stating before, it's a healing journey, because that is how we were taught, that is how we were
Right.
growing up, especially us as mothers. And we were taught to take care of everybody else first.
Yes.
I think especially, yeah, it's not uncommon to see the mom eating always cold because she's taking care of everybody else. Everybody else is eating in the table and she's still cooking. So I think that is important to know that. I love how your basis is the well-being of the mom, because I think that that is part of a lot of that healing that needs to happen with the mom, with simple things like saying no and taking a
Yes.
space, and don't feel guilty about it. Because then how many moms are like, oh, I'm gonna take care of me, but then they choose their self-care choice, but then they are floated with guilt, or they are throwing that time on their face by their partners or their families.
Hmm.
So it's as simple as, sometimes it's just learning to say no. I actually spent a full year, I call it my year of no. And that was for a full year. I say no to the most small things, just to work that muscle and
Yes.
make me feel comfortable to say no to other things and say, hey, no, thank you. One of the things that I love, one of the things that I love to work with my clients is, boundaries are the place where I can love you and I still love myself. And I
Okay.
think that that is huge, on remembering that I don't have to stop loving myself to show you that I love you as my son, as my partner, as my mother. I can love you and still love myself. And part of loving myself is what you were saying on the well being. Let's
Mhm.
now talk a little bit about the dynamics of the household and how they are affecting the well-being of the mom, especially with the partnership, into the patriarchal normal roles of dad works and provides for the house, so dad comes at 5 p.m. and just go and watch games and sports, and mom is doing anything, everything and anything. Into how, with your approach, we can start finding a more balanced way into, I will not say 50-50, but each parent to show up 100% in the life or of their kids and their families.
Yes. So that becomes part of the home logistics, right? So the first step is figuring out what are the things that your family wants to, that are important to your family, right? I think that's a good place to start, in deciding how to create this division of labor. right now, the way that it looks in most households as a general rule, right, is that yes, dads are going to work, they're providing because that's what dads do. They come home and then they are off the hook, or even if they are participating in the household stuff, mom many times will still carry a lot of the burden because they're still orchestrating the whole thing, right? Which is what they refer to as the mental load, right? Thinking about all the things that need to be done. And I think to a certain extent, as moms, we are still going to do that. I think a part of us wants to do that, right? Because I think as moms, to be honest, a part of us wants to have a little bit of like that management of the household. I can't speak for all moms, but I know that for me, there are things that I want to be able to delegate and like give to other people to do, but I still want to be in the in for some things. So the first thing I had to do, I know that that dynamic was not going to work for me, right? Like I have my business, I am very intentional about the way that I parent. I have my partner, and I knew that we would not sustain our household if I continued to try to do it all in that model that we've been taught. So I started sitting down, like it starts with first with having conversations, with even acknowledging that that's happening, not from a defensive, angry place. Because what I've noticed in these conversations is, and I understand why this is happening, but I noticed that in rooms, virtual or physical rooms, where women or moms are having conversations about the dynamics in the household, it becomes a dad bashing party or a man bashing party, right? It's very charged with frustration, resentment, anger, which I understand, right? Because it feels unfair that all of this is falling on the mom. But again, sitting in those emotions does not allow us to find solutions, right? Like I shifted to this place of I was like, okay, well, if this isn't working, like how do we change it? Like who says we need to be doing things this way? Nobody, right? We get to decide how we want to do it. So it's first sitting down with your partner and being like, what are the things that we want for our family? And what are the things that need to be done to uphold what we want for our family? That already cuts out a bunch of stuff that you might be doing that you don't even need to be doing, right? And then it's sitting down with your partner and saying, what are the things that you can take over? And what are the things that I can keep or I want to keep? Right. And I started going through, I always go back to this one day that I was in the garage. I was working out. We were about to get ready to work out together. And I started crying. And he looks at me and he's like, well, what's wrong? And I told him, I feel overwhelmed. And he said, how could I help? Like, how can I help? What can I do? And I looked at him and I didn't have an answer. I didn't even know. Even though I was so overwhelmed, I didn't know what I could or was allowed to hand over to him. Right. So I sat back and I said, well, what do I want to hand over? Right. Do I want him to take the kids to their doctor's appointments and worry about their medical care? No, I kind of like doing that part because I need to be in the know anyway. Right. For some moms, it might have been, yes, I don't want to do that part. I'm going to hand it over. So I started going through all the different areas of the things that I manage in the household and started saying, like, I don't want to worry about this anymore. And I don't want to worry about this anymore. And telling him to take it over completely. So, for example, football. My son plays football. My husband takes them to the practices and we go to the games as a family every Saturday. But I was managing the group chat, registration, getting his uniform. Do we need to take snacks this week? Is practice canceled? Is this, that, whatever? So I was still doing all the behind the scenes work. So I told him, hey, I want you to take over football. Like, I want you to handle football from beginning to end. You worry about the registration dates and you pay for it. You order his uniform. You communicate with the coach. You take him to practice. We all show up to the games because I think it's important for us all to show up to support him. That's one of our values. Um, and and he said, sure, I can do that. Right. And he took all of the responsibility. And then the next day I'm like in the chat chatting and he pulls me aside and he's like, hey, didn't you tell me that you wanted me to take it over completely? Because we also get in our way sometimes too, right? Because we're so used to doing it all. So there's this learning curve of recognizing what you want and can hand over and then allowing the other person to help you and doing it and having faith that the other person can do it just as well as you can, and if not, that they will learn to get there, right? I think we have to
And
do
I
a lot
think that
more.
I believe that that is one of the main reasons why dads that want to, because I think that we have two groups of dads. The dads that don't even think about it because their family was very patriarchal, but there are
Yeah,
also dads that want to help, that want to be involved. And what you say there was like golden for all the moms. Please write what Cynthia just told us in capital letters. You need to let go. You need to focus on the outcome, not in how you do it. Because then
yeah,
what happened a lot of times, you're like, oh yeah, my husband is going to do the dishes. And then your husband do the dishes and you start behind him. Hey, but you don't clean the dishes like
mm,
that. Hey, but use this dish. Hey, but you need to run. And then your husband is like, then do it. So
yeah,
I think that is part of us to heal that good girl perfectionist syndrome that we have inside of us, to say, start thinking in the outcome, not in the how. So the outcome is that the dishes are clean. How my husband do it, I sip it up and I don't even look about. Is his responsibility. And stop using and treating our husbands and our partners like kids. You don't
yeah,
have to supervise what your partner is doing. You need to supervise and be willing to make mistakes. In your soccer example, I love it. Mom, there is going to be a chance that your husband or your partner, because he's not used to it, will forget registration one day. Instead of immediately what we do in our head of solving everything, you're like, oh my God, I will do it from now on because now our
yeah,
kid doesn't have a session, a season. Let them sit. Okay, honey, go and explain to Peter that this season he's not going to be on soccer, or go and talk with the president and the pope to let you pay after with fees, but then let them make mistakes
yeah.
without taking over. Because I think that that is the other thing is, we have two cases: the moms that are all the time in front behind them, correcting them, telling them you did it wrong, you need to do it this way. So then the partners are like, I'm not
It kills
fine.
their confidence, right? Like, who wants to
Yeah.
do something and they feel like they're
And
doing it
they're
wrong
like,
all the time?
I have enough in my house for then hearing you talking blah 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 blah, so I'm not do it. Or, so those are one. Or on the other ones that let go, but then when the mistakes happen, they're like, see, you cannot do it, I will bring it back. Let the pain happening. Laundry, if your partner make laundry and is pink, breathe,
And
and then
show. Maybe he needs to be shown how to do it.
go and shop for more clothes.
Yeah,
And so I think that that is very important. And then the other thing that I want to talk with you about, because I love how you say how the circles are all about that self pity and complaining. I One of the things I love Sarah Blakely, the owner of Spanx, but then she was in the mirror in the eye of the hurricane a few weeks ago, because she posted on Instagram a picture of her two sons, red like a shrimp, like completely sunburned. And then her post was like, oh, I bought the tickets, I scheduled the hotel, I scheduled the transportation, I bought everything that we need for the travel, I did this, this, this. Her husband, Jesse's job was applying sunblock to the kids.
mhm.
That was was like, that was his only job. And then you can see the results. The kids were completely sunburned, but she did it laughing about it as humor. And then there was
Mhm.
a lot of other men like, oh yeah, those are that. Oh yeah, it has to be like that. I think that I want to hear your opinion. We as moms need to stop laughing and making fun of, oh, those are dads. Oh, you have that story. Let me show you. Let me share my story.
Yeah.
It's not funny. We should not be making jokes and fun about how dads are not stepping into the family dynamics as we need them to.
Yeah, we're actually becoming our own obstacle, right? We're creating our own roadblock towards them getting there. And you mentioned a second ago, like, our husbands are not children. Stop treating them like children, which I absolutely agree. We need to give them the opportunity to figure things out, and they are adults and they are capable, and we hopefully married them because we saw that they were capable of something, right? But the other side of that coin, which I think is where we also have to give some grace, is that if my husband does the laundry and the laundry turns pink, that's probably because he's never been taught how to do the laundry, right? So that's where I can step in and say, hey, yes, I can go buy new clothes and not berate him, but I can also then say, oh, I didn't realize that you may not know how to do this because nobody probably taught you how to do this. Like I was taught, like I remember my mom specifically sitting down and teaching me how to do laundry, right? Like, unfortunately, a lot of times the boys don't get taught this, which this is changing, right? I think our children are going to have a different experience of that, hopefully, um, as they get older, because they're going to be living in these different family dynamics, right? We're going to break down that paradigm of what the family was and create a more modern family for today's world. But we can also ask our husbands, right? If we notice they're always doing the dishes wrong, like there's still food in it or they're leaving soap in it, not they didn't organize it in the sink the way that I would have organized it, right? Because I think sometimes we could get very petty on things being done the way that we do them. But let's say he really isn't doing the dishes right, like he's leaving food stuck on them, right? That's where I would step in, and instead of criticizing, I would teach, right? I'd be like, babe, thank you so much for doing the dishes. I really appreciate it. It feels so good to not have to worry about the dishes after I cook dinner. But I notice that you've been struggling with washing the pans. This is what I do when I wash the pans, right? You can put a little bit of soap in it, you can soak them for a while, and then when you come, it's so much easier to get the food off. It may seem very common sense to us, but it wasn't common sense to us. We were taught it. Most of us, I mean, yes, we can figure this stuff out, but most of us, somebody showed us, like, this is what you do in this situation, right? So giving our husband that same grace, and not only for our husbands, for our kids too, right? A lot of times we don't have confidence that our kids can do things, and we don't let them do it even if they do it wrong so that they can learn. I also, a lot of these moms that are probably berating their husbands are probably very intentional, conscientious moms. A lot of them, I would imagine. I would also think, would you berate your child if your child went out in the sun and forgot to put on sunblock? Look, the other day I got in the car with my son. We were going to his friend's house, and he was going to get in the pool. And it was like a last minute thing. He said, my friend's going to get in the pool. Can you take me over for a little bit? I was like, fine. We get in the car, and he has a bag with him. And I'm thinking that he packed a towel and a change of clothes, right? I gave him his EpiPen because he has an allergy and he forgets, even though I feel like he should remember. But I always give him the EpiPen. And when we're getting there, I said, "Hey, baby," I said, "Did you pack a towel and a change of clothes?" And he looks at me. We're in the car driving already, and he looks at me and he goes, "No." And I kind of paused and I said, "Well, what's in your bag?" And he said, "A football and a soccer ball." I was like, did you think that you might need to change or dry yourself when you're at your friend's house in the pool? And he's like, no. And like it made me laugh, but then I paused and I said, well, usually I'm the one that packs the bag for him because usually wherever he's going, I'm going with them. I pack the bag. He doesn't think about it. So that was a moment for me to say, hey, in the future, if you're gonna go hang out at a friend's house, because he's 10 now, right? He's not a baby anymore. I'm like, if you're gonna go do something, you need to think, what do I need or what do I have to prepare to be there and plan for it, because I can't always, like, I can't think of all the things, right? I can't always plan for. I was in the middle of cleaning when he asked me to take him to his friend's house, so it didn't occur to me. So we need to give our husbands that same. The other thing that I hear a lot is, why should I have to tell him to help me? Okay, you could choose not to tell him to help you and wait for him to figure it out, which you probably won't, because again, he hasn't been taught how to interject and help, or even that you're struggling half the time. Or you can just communicate and say, hey, it would be really helpful if, like, I had a mom share with me that when they go traveling to Disney, she's getting ready, getting the kids ready, doing all the things, and her husband gets ready and then sits on the chair in the hotel room and is just hanging out. And she's like, well, he sees me running around. Shouldn't he know that he needs to help me with the kids? And I said, do me a favor. Next time you guys go, try putting the clothes out or not putting it out, whatever works for you, and telling him, asking him, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom and finish getting ready. Can you dress the baby? Chances are he's going to do it without a problem. But now you're sitting there angry that he didn't notice that you needed help, and that impacts the whole dynamic, right? We need to be better about communicating.
And I think that is part of that that was taught from us, because it's that genetics of that passive aggressive mode of communicating of our moms and our grandmas, that was that passive aggressive, oh, she'll know, and then
Yeah.
give room to, oh my god, I'm the victim and everything is so hard and nobody cares about me. And I think that is part of us being conscious into stepping up and saying, no, is he a mind reader? And I will tell you something, I don't know if any of you with a partner, but when my partner wants something, he told me. He's not
Yeah.
expecting me to read his mind. So why we cannot do the same courtesy and say, hey, because the reality, I love how you keep going back into the same point that is so important is, I will say over 90% of our partners, especially if they are males, were never taught a lot of things in the household: how to do dishes, how to do laundry, how to do sunblock. So that is where we need to be effective communicators. And I love you were saying before, the story on your garage. That is where I think that I'm a ruler in archetypes, very perfectionist. Do a list of all the things that you do and ask your partner to do a list too, because one of the things that I did when I did the same
Mhm.
exercise was, because if you just do your list and you say, hey, I want you to help me with this, then depending on the personality of your partner is going to be like, but I'm busy too. And you are
Yeah.
telling me that I'm not doing anything or not doing enough. So then treat it as an equal. You make your list and they will make their list. And you may be surprised that there are things that they are doing that you are
Yeah.
not realizing, and seeing their list will help you to get appreciation. That doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you still will not give them some things, because the reality is, normally your list is this big and theirs is this or this big. But when you do that exercise, then you are like, oh, for example, for me, one of those things was my yard, him cutting off the grass, and it takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, but it's something that
Right.
I never have to worry about. When I see it in the list, I was like, oh, every time that I see him outside cutting the grass, I'm gonna get a moment of gratitude of say, thank you, that is
Yeah.
appreciated. And then I love how you mention very critically, say, pick the things that are the most important for you and ask them to help you with the ones that are either not as important or that you really don't like. So, for example, in my house was laundry. I am from Colombia, and in Colombia, majority of middle class people had help in their house.
Right.
So I came to the United States at 29 years old, and I didn't know how to do laundry. My partner in the other side was taught to do laundry since he was little,
Mhm.
because it was his mom and three boys. So for me, it was like, you do laundry because you know how to do it. You are going to do it a lot better than me. Done. I don't worry about laundry in my
Yeah.
house. So Cynthia,
You,
now go ahead.
sorry. No, I just wanted to touch on you bringing up a wonderful point about the list and looking at the list. And sometimes when you lay out the list, you may even realize that there may be things that you're doing that you absolutely do not enjoy doing, that your partner may actually enjoy doing or want to do, right? So that's the beautiful thing about having the two lists is also it's like, oh, that thing, I'm willing to take that off your list. I don't mind doing that. That would be fun for me, right? And it could be like maybe the mom handles all the cooking, but dad loves to cook. He just never has time to cook because he's doing other things, right? You guys can even swap responsibilities. Like, you want the cooking here, you have the cooking. I'll take this instead. So there might be things that your partner may be better at doing than you are, or may enjoy doing better than you are, that you can hand over. And I want to mention in that note, in terms of sharing responsibilities, that there's another paradigm that we need to break. And I know it might be more cultural than anything. I know that in the Hispanic community, this is very much so. I don't know about in other cultures as much. But in the Hispanic community, there's even um, judgments placed around men doing certain thing, right? Like you will hear older generations say, change a diaper. Men don't do that, right? Not cooking, because cooking, I think a lot of men do, but like Maybe wash the clothes. Well, men don't wash clothes, right? There's all these ideas. If you live in a household, this is the big one. What if I love my business. For example, I love my business. I love my work. We always joke around at home like, if we won the lottery, what would we do? And I'm like, if I won the lottery, I would continue working and I wouldn't have to be stressed about making money, but I would continue working because I love my work. But other people will be like, I quit right away. So if I live in a household, let's say, where I love my business and I want to focus on my career, I'm the woman, right? And my husband is feeling sad and left out because he's working all the time and he really just wished that he could spend more time with his children. Who's to say? This is the beautiful thing about looking at your family and deciding who each one of you guys are and what you desire for yourself and your life. Who's to say that dad cannot be more present and active in the child's care, being even being a stay-at-home dad, and then mom's not out pursuing her career because that's where her passion is at and what she wants to do, right? It's really shifting those ways of thinking that families should be functioning and really creating a dynamic that works for your unique family, which is going to look different from the next person and the next person.
And I think that that is a beautiful message into giving ourselves the space and the permission to discover that if we are single moms or if we have a partner in our family, and giving the grace to say, I love how you say drop the shoes. It's not how it should, it's how it's working for us.
Yes.
It's how we are going. And it's funny that you say that because, for example, in my household, it's very similar. I love working, I love my business. My husband is like, I don't like working. I work because of the bills. But
Yeah.
when the business is at that level, my husband is going to retire and be a stay at home dad. And I think that is part of that normalizing of
Mm.
there is not one way. The only thing that are is your way, the way of you um figuring out what works for you. Because going back full circle with what we start with, somebody told me this and say, moms are the sun, dads are the solar panel. And is that a
Mm.
good analogy into sometimes no, I think majority of the time, if we as the mom are good, are balanced, are centered, are happy, are well taken care of, our mental health is good, then when we have our cup full, not because we need to give, but because we know that we are worthy of a full cup, then our family is better, our
Yeah.
marriage is better, our kids are better, and it's how we can
Mm.
normalize that. Because, and I think that this is how we're going to close. I love how the last pillar of your thriving families model is parenting, because we as moms, especially the ones that watch my show that are a lot more conscious moms, we are so worried about parenting our kids different than how we were parent. We are so worried to not make the same mistakes that our parents did. But I love how you put it, as like that is actually the last priority. You need to take care of your well-being first, then your partnership and your home logistics, and then parenting. And I will bet money, and you have the experience and the numbers. If you take care of the first three, the fourth one is going to be so much easier.
Yes. And I love that you noticed that it was at the end and it was intentionally placed at the end because exactly what you said. If the first three are solid, if you are pouring from a filled cup, right? If you are not only taking care of yourself, but very clear on who you are as a person and what your needs are, right? Because it's from there that you're going to set your boundaries, that you're going to ask for help, that you're going to fill your cup, right? You need to know who you are to know how to do any of those things. If you know who you are, then you can show up as you are in your partnership and create a partnership that is aligned with who you are and who your partner is, right? And then from that place, you're going to create goals for your family that are aligned with who you are as a partnership. Because at the end of the day, I mean, your children may decide to be someone or something different when they're older, but you guys are like captain and co-captain of the household. You guys are going to decide how that household runs, hopefully And this is where the parenting comes, and then the home logistics creates supports that vision, right? With the parenting, the only thing that I think we really need to do, if we have those first three solid, is allow ourselves to really get to know our children. A lot of times, if we have the container, right, our goals, our vision, our values, our mission for our family, then we need to get to know our children for who they are and allow us to guide them on how we guide us on how we can best implement tools, strategies, ideas of how to uphold those goals, mission, and values for us. And understand that our kids sometimes may differ from that, and that's okay, but we create those parameters, right? And our children are each going to be parented differently. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son, and what I do with them and how I handle them, how I communicate with them, their needs are entirely different. So with parenting, I've taught a parenting courses in my career, and I always felt frustrated because I would teach the course, and inevitably parents or a few in the room would say, I've tried all these strategies and it's not working, right? So they either feel like their child is broken and can't be fixed, or they believe that they're a failure as a parent. And what I've realized, as with most things, is that you have to have knowledge of many, and then you need to pull from them and apply them to your child. But the most important thing is not knowing all the methods, it's knowing your child. If you know your child, you'll know what methods to apply instead of blindly applying them and then feeling frustrated, both feeling frustrated, because you're both going to walk away feeling like failures. Your kids because they can't meet your expectations, and you because you can't transform your child. So
I love that, Mike. Actually, my parenting coach actually said this to my husband because my husband is a lot more like in the engineering, like give me a formula and I will follow it. And engineering and manufacturing, after you had it nailed down, you work and keep
yeah,
working, and it's something that is called repetibility and reproducibility. And then my parenting coach was like, as soon as start working, your kid brain is going to develop and it's not going to work anymore. And you have to
yeah,
find a different way to meet
yes,
your kid, because remember, literally, we are seeing kids a different brain every day. So,
yes.
Cynthia, thank you so much. We have so much more to talk about.
I
We are
know.
closing up. I would love to have you back as a guest. Now, as we closing, I would love for you to share with the moms around the world how they can learn more from you, where they can find you, where, if they fall in love with you like I did, how they can connect with you.
So the best places to find me are, you can go to my website, which is www.soul, S-O-U-L, alignswellness.org. And also my Instagram is a great place to connect. We can connect in the DMs. I post information on there, which is Cynthia at Soul Aligned Wellness. And I'd love to chat with any of the parents out there about any questions or thoughts or ideas they have to this idea of shifting the family system, which I believe as we shift the family system, we're going to push up against all of our other systems and we're going to shift all of them, right? Because I think all of our systems are failing in the way that they're serving us. And when I say systems, I mean like education, work, like healthcare, all the systems, right? There's all these other systems that exist, but the family unit is the basic one, right? So if we start there and we change our needs as families, then then the other systems have to change to keep up, right? So that's the ultimate goal. So connect with me, and I would love to have more conversations about this. So Cynthia at Soul Aligned Wellness on Instagram would be the best place.
Thank you, Cynthia. Please, everybody,
Thank
go
you.
and follow Cynthia and share with me as well on a DM what was the most impacting thing that you hear today, and how you are being willing to apply what Cynthia said and shift the family dynamic that it was for a family dynamic that works for you and
Yes,
your family. And
yes.
also remember, this show can be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.